look at the headline. The headline says, breaking, Tucker Carlson coddles Vladimir Putin in interview. The best thing about this is their own audience wasn't buying this. And this is why you see the NATO left in shambles over this interview, because they have been discredited. Cenk Uygur spent all his time demonizing people about Putin, right? He's like the textbook example of Putin derangement syndrome. He believed Putin is our number one enemy, and he was all for fighting Russians in Ukraine because he hates Putin that much. Meanwhile, he voted for Joe Biden, the guy who's literally complicit with a genocide. TYT is so unserious, they legitimately believe that Putin has killed more people than Jim Crow Joe, than Barack Obama, the people that they support and voted for. They vote for people and they're going to vote for him again, the people who are complicit with a genocide, but they want us to hate Putin. So what happens? This interview come out, and then Putin is humanized. The person that Cenk has been demonizing as this insane tyrant who's completely unhinged, he does this interview and comes off extremely smart, way smarter than Cenk Uygur, way more dignified than Cenk Uygur. So they can't address that, so they have to lie. They had to lie about what happened in the interview, and I can't wait for your reaction. We're not going to watch the whole thing because we don't have to. We only have to watch only a few minutes because I'm going to show you guys how they react and how the NATO left is in complete shambles because their narrative has been discredited completely. But let's dive into it.
So you said a moment ago that the world would be a lot better if it weren't broken into competing alliances, if there was cooperation globally. One of the reasons you don't have that is because the current American administration is dead set against you. Do you think if there were a new administration after Joe Biden that you would be able to reestablish communication with the U.S. government? Or does it not matter who the president is?
Yes, of course. The lack of world peace really has everything to do with America, nothing to do with the guy who invaded a sovereign country.
Zoya, what did she get wrong there? Because the idea that Ukraine was a sovereign country and this war started in 2022, where Russia invaded Ukraine, that's the lie that she's just trying to tell her audience.
Well, if America wants to have amnesia and forget the Cuban Missile Crisis, I guess any of this would make sense. But America was never okay with Russia putting missiles right on its border. So why would Russia be okay with NATO expansion constantly encroaching and threatening their security? They said that it was a red line for them. What did the West think that would happen when every single academic, even those that are against Russia, came out and said, do not cross this red line. You are going to force Russia's hand to act. And throughout the entire time, Russia was offering negotiations. Now, as far as the history of Ukraine, I don't think we're going to repeat everything that Putin said, but basically Kiev Rus started in Kiev, Kiev Rus. Now Ukrainians want to pretend that Rus doesn't stand for Russia, but yes, it's very comical. So Ukraina, Krai means edge, U means at, Ukraina, at the edge. Ukraine was the edge of Russia. It's not the edge of its own sovereign country. What is it the edge of? Your own name gives away your origins. Come on now. And of course, they were closest to Western influences. And oh, sorry.
They always call us when we live. Like, y'all niggas know we live, man. Go ahead.
Come on, CIA. So Ukraine has claimed it's just revisionism. They're rewriting history when we all know that there was a territory that was named Ukraine amongst many others, but it was Lenin that brought Ukraine into being as what we're seeing now. And Crimea was handed later in the 1950s to this. It was always Russian. And the reason that Lenin did this was because he was strategically trying to create these national identities and merge them together. But he did not foresee the collapse of the Soviet Union and how this would play out and the dangers of carving out this artificial national identity and how it can be hijacked, which is what we saw. Ukrainians and Russians, as Putin pointed out, every second or third person is going to have a friend or relative in Ukraine. I mean, right now, funny enough, Siersky, the replacement for Zaluzhny, is a Russian that was born near Moscow, educated in Russia. So we're talking about the commander of defense in Ukraine is a full-blooded Russian with Russian parents living in Russia, celebrating Victory Day in Russia. These countries are countries of Slavs. Of course, there was foreign influences coming in through the West, and we heard Putin describe how the borders shifted between Poland and Hungary. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but basically, Ukraine is an artificially created state, and Russia was more than willing to work with them and actually send them billions in aid throughout their existence and gave them really cheap access to resources like gas. They were trying to work as partners, and this was just a complete backstabbing after the 2014 coup that Putin talked about, where the government was hijacked by CIA-backed neo-Nazis. And that is who is in charge now. And as he accurately points out, the glorification of Nazism came back with highlighting Bandera, who was a murderer of Jews and Poles and many other people with the OUN. Now this murderer's face is in malls, in books, on street names, on statues. So they tore down statues of people who beat the Nazis in World War II and replaced them with somebody that worked with the Nazis.
You're not getting this kind of analysis on TYT. The people that think they're serious. Like, that's why we don't even cover TYT. This is a rare TYT segment from us. They are so deeply unserious. For one, if you think Jim Crow Joe is the lesser two evil over Putin, that he killed less people than Putin, you are deeply unserious. Zoya's love, Zoya's life, way too powerful. You're not getting this analysis on, like, the majority report is a joke. You know what I mean? TYT is a joke. We are considered the deplorable left. Like, why you're not gonna hear this, you're not gonna hear Zoya on these shows. You're not gonna get this perspective on these shows. You're gonna have a Karen millionaire white woman who's gonna lie to you about everything. Named Anna Kasparian. Anna Kasparian like quickly blocked RBN because we had the truth that she could not dispute. That she absolutely could not dispute. Like, she's an easy ratio. We ratioed her multiple times. Nope, immediately blocked them.
And just to add one little thing about Anna herself, Anna is an Armenian, and she's been excommunicated from the Armenian church. And why? Because Anna the Armenian is on a show called The Young Turks. So she's seen as a traitor to her own people. This person has no integrity, but let's hear what she has to say.
Yeah. I'll play that beginning part again. We let it play. Once again, we're not going to watch a lot of this. Maybe 4 or 5 minutes. That's as much as I could stomach. Because it's horrible. I didn't plan on covering this. I got a tip from a friend about how TYT, their own audience doesn't buy this shit. That's the only reason why I end up covering this, because it's a feel-good story at the end of the day. Because even their own audience, if you look at the comments, overwhelmingly is calling them out. Overwhelmingly. So, and I'm going to show you guys why.
Yes, of course. The lack of world peace really has everything to do with America, nothing to do with the guy who invaded a sovereign country. But anyway, Tucker Carlson announced 2 days ago that he would be interviewing Vladimir Putin. And today that interview was finally published. We've pulled some clips and we want to discuss it. Now, before we watch, it is important to give you a little bit of context and a note about this 2.5 hour long interview. Nearly half of it is taken up by a monologue by Vladimir Putin. Tucker Carlson opens the interview by asking Putin why he chose to invade Ukraine in 2020.
Pretty important topic, right? Pretty important to go over this issue in great detail instead of just making bullshit electoral politics clips like you guys do on YouTube. Right? Isn't that important? You guys see how they just, and this is what you were talking about earlier, Zoya. The American reaction, and I think this is more like duopoly brain, where they try to demonize like the content. I was deeply entertained listening to the history lesson. Even though I knew a lot of it, but I'm like, it's good to hear from Putin. I'm a friend of history. But you guys see the anti-intellectualism that they try to spread? Oh my God, it's history lesson. Oh my God, him explaining the context of why this war is going on. But I'll let it continue.
22. That's the sovereign country that I referenced earlier, of course. Putin then spends almost an hour describing his version of the history of Russia.
His version? What is she gonna explain what he said that was incorrect? You guys already know the answer to that question. I'll let it continue.
And Ukraine, going back to the Middle Ages. And Tucker Carlson only interrupts him a handful of times as he's engaging in this monologue. Now, Putin eventually comes to an answer that isn't really new. It's more of what we've heard from Putin before. He talks about NATO expansion. Western nations were not so friendly to Russia.
And wait. You say you heard this before, Anna. Why do you guys keep lying then? They keep saying, well, we already heard this before. You guys keep saying that Putin invaded Ukraine for no reason. If you heard what he said in the interview, and you heard what he said in many interviews before this, he gave a pretty textbook reason of why Western aggression and broken promises and NATO expansionism and the rise of Banderite Nazi ideology in Ukraine was the leading factor of this. But when you guys talk about it, you guys act like Putin one day just woke up and snapped. But anyway, let's continue. But this is why this interview wasn't so important, because they can't strawman him no more. And this is why they hate the fact that it happened. But let's continue. Zoya, if you want to interrupt anytime, feel free though. Feel free. Because I do it all the time.
And too many Nazis in Ukraine, allegedly, that he likes to point to those things. Again, things we've heard before. Go ahead, Cenk.
So before the interview, there was questions about, is he going to be tough on Putin? Really? Does anybody think that he was going to be tough on Putin?
He definitely was adversarial on a few topics. Way more adversarial than the average Zelensky interview. Every time Zelensky is interviewed by a Western reporter, they are licking his boots. Their questions essentially to Zelensky will go something like this. Zelensky, you've been doing such a great job with this war. Why don't people appreciate you more? That's the average question to Zelensky. Where's the complaints about that from the NATO left? You know who constantly does softball interviews? The TYT left. The people who had Marianne Williamson on, and they allowed Marianne Williamson to lie to their audience and say that Marianne Williamson has a chance to win the election. Marianne Williamson got 3% in a state she put a lot of time into. Meanwhile, on Breaking Points, meanwhile on Bree's show, meanwhile on TYT, she go on your guys' show. And she said with a straight face that she's gonna win this election. You guys allow her to do that, but you guys think you can mock someone else for getting softball interviews? I explained this on Thursday. My interpretation of this was Putin was asking probing questions, including questions that challenges Putin's worldview. He challenged Putin on China and got smacked around. Challenged him on the spy that Russia went after, slapped him around. And I'm going to show you guys Scott Ritter article on that, debunking that here soon. But you guys see the lie that they're spreading, that it was a softball interview? Zoya, before I continue, what was do you think it was softball? You guys can push back on me if you guys want. Like, do you guys disagree with me? Because I thought he pushed back a little bit. I thought it was going to be softball. Remember on Tuesday, I told you guys, I think it's definitely going to be a softball. Then I watched it, I'm like, oh shit, it actually wasn't as softball as I thought it was going to be, because I'm intellectually honest. I'm willing to admit to you guys when I am not correct. My initial assessment was I thought it was going to be a softball. It was not. That is what honest commentators would do. But anyway, sorry, I meant to ask you a question.
No, I agree with you completely. I think that Tucker was adversarial and even rude at some points. He kept constantly cutting Putin off and not letting Putin formulate his answers, because Americans are used to neat sound bites. They tune out when somebody's explaining something to them with facts and history. So the only critique I would have for Tucker Carlson is that some of his questions were honestly idiotic. The way he was pressuring, for the release of a spy, as if any other country would be like, oh, okay, Carlson, thank you for trying to guilt us into giving you more. And here you go, we'll release a spy. It's outrageous. Tucker was actually out of line many times, and I don't think it was a softball at all. I just think that he could have asked stronger questions.
Here's Scott Ritter. And I'll admit, I haven't really looked into this story that much. You know what I mean? Because I'm not like I never was a big Putin like fan supporter. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, maybe fucked him up, maybe not. Maybe it's spy, maybe not. So I'll admit 100%, I never really looked into the story that much. But here's Scott Ritter. I know people like Zoya. I know a lot of people who have reported on this. Here's Scott Ritter opinion on this. Tucker Carlson should have done a better job familiarizing himself with the details surrounding Ivan Gershkovich's arrest on the charges of espionage. Sometimes it turns out a spy is just a spy. And that's what, and Ritter has done fantastic reporting on this. And this is something that Tucker Carlson brought up as a way to challenge him. But how many times have Joe Biden has been interviewed by CNN, MSNBC, and quote unquote like credible reporters, journalists, and mainstream establishment mindset, but they never asked Biden about Julian Assange. In my mindset, you should never give an interview with a Democratic elected official without bringing up Julian Assange. That will show you how deep this. Go ahead, Zoya. Feel free to interrupt.
And Julian Assange was never collecting sensitive data to give to a foreign entity, unlike the spy that's actually in Russian detention right now.
Oh, Zoya, do you know the story? Can you once again, this is not that strong.
Yeah.
Educate us on what's the. Go ahead.
So the last tweet I sent you in your DM is going to tell us about who potentially Putin actually wants to swap this guy out for. And the guy, Putin talked about this in his interview. The man that they're holding in Germany was actually a Russian patriot. Let's go ahead.
Of course.
Yes, let's go ahead and read this little summary. In an interview,
there you go.
In an interview, Putin suddenly hinted that the release of American spy Evan Gershkovich is possible if our patriot who killed an Ichkeria terrorist militant in Germany is released. Many did not understand who we were talking about. Vadim Krasikov is an officer of the Russian Special Services sentenced in Germany to life imprisonment. On August 23, 2019, Krasikov rode up behind Zelimkin Kongoshvili on a bicycle, who took part in the Second Chechen War as a field commander. This guy was a war criminal. So Zelimkin shot him in the head. So this Russian Special Services person is being held in Germany for liquidating a war criminal who, as Putin was saying, would line up Russian soldiers and drive over their heads.
Wow. And this is the person that the Western media defends so like vigorously. The person that Tucker Carlson is defending as well. Well, I should probably look into this more. That's crazy. That's fucking crazy. Do you know the Biden administration is going after the Uhuru Black Socialist movement? They're trying to prosecute them for being quote unquote foreign agents because they don't have an opinion that align with the Western narrative on Ukraine. They're trying to charge average working class Black people who just organize because they disagree with Ukraine. You guys have no idea how tyrannical the Biden administration has become. So as that is happening, you guys pretending that Putin is more tyrannical for going after this guy? Remember, Biden is the person that Cenk Uygur voted for, and he's going to vote for him again. Cenk Uygur, just like Marianne Williamson, ran a pathetic campaign, and one of the things he was saying is he was trying to make Democrats stronger. He said we need the elections to make Biden a stronger candidate. But he's okay with Biden charging Black socialists, but he's gonna pretend that Tucker gave a softball interview, even though he actually did repeat Western narratives. Let's continue. We don't have that much longer in this. You guys see how desperate they are to lie about this interview. It gets worse. Let's continue.
Hang on, sorry, just one more thing.
Feel free. Go ahead.
You know what TYT is never going to do? They are never going to talk about what took place in Yugoslavia when NATO went against their own rules-based order and bombed a sovereign country. They were bombing school buses and children and roads and civilian infrastructure. NATO is a terrorist organization. We have seen this time and time again across the world. What they did in Libya when they first went in, defensive alliance, they bombed one of the most advanced irrigation systems in the world. That was their first target in Libya. These monsters are hurting regular civilians all over the world in order to destabilize so they can come in and rob them. Of course, Putin is a threat to them because Putin just announced that he is willing to offer Iraq aid, military support, in order to get US removed from a sovereign country that no longer wants them. That's why they want Putin out, because Putin presents a threat to their criminal enterprise.
Zoya's love, Zoya's life. Well said. This is a super chat. And thank you for reminding me what got me blocked. Because I was blocked from Anna on Twitter a long time ago because I posted a picture with Anna Kasparian and Madeleine Albright together, and it went pretty viral. I think maybe a few thousand likes on it. And then Anna immediately blocked me after that. And I didn't even tag her. I just posted the picture with a comment about it because she was trending at the time. Then, like not too long afterwards, I was blocked from Anna and TYT. So thank you, 007 Angelo, for reminding me what got me blocked from Anna and TYT. You can search my tweets and you can find exactly what got me blocked. Search Anna and Madeleine Albright. You probably find the picture I posted. So as she criticized Tucker for giving a softball interview to Putin, which he did not do, she had a war criminal, Madeleine Albright, you know, the person who said it was worth sanctioning and starving 500,000 Iraqi children. She said that was worth it. She doesn't regret that at all. But Anna Kasparian respects her as a female leader. That's the end game for white liberal feminism, when you have Anna Kasparian, a white liberal feminist, who looks up to Madeleine Albright, who's okay with starving Iraqi children, among many other crimes. But let's continue this. Oh, man. I'm glad I got Zoya here with me because this TYT segment is very stressful. Very stressful. Let's continue.
Does anybody think that he was going to be tough on Putin? But I think you have your answer when you don't interrupt someone for over an hour as they're giving you propaganda. I mean, even if you don't think it's propaganda, you might want to ask a follow-up question. You might want to interject. You might want to challenge something he said within that hour. If he didn't challenge him for an entire hour, what you thought everything he said there was so true, you didn't have to clarify with the audience that perhaps it wasn't. And so, and then you saw in that just small clip that we showed you, you know, the American government seems so dead set against you. Is that the real problem? Like, we're biased against him. Well, our bias might come from the fact that he invaded Ukraine, but look, we've got our own problems.
Cenk Uygur is so delusional, my friends. This man, Cenk Uygur, one of the dumbest motherfuckers in politics who lost every single debate he has ever had. Name one time Cenk Uygur ever had a debate and motherfuckers was like, Cenk Uygur is killing it. Not one time. He was absolutely dismantled by Brianna Joy Gray. That comes to mind immediately. Cenk Uygur, he's so bad at politics, he loses to right-wingers. Like, he will get shit on by like the Ben Shapiro's every once in a while. That's how bad he is. So despite how dumb Cenk Uygur is, Cenk Uygur believed that he can square up with Vladimir Putin in the intellectual ring. He believes that if he had an interview with Putin and Putin was explaining the history of why he invaded Ukraine, then Cenk Uygur will be like, hey, Putin, why do you think you can invade a sovereign country? And he thinks that Putin will be stumped by that question. Boy, Putin would eat you up alive, fam. I mean, can you imagine, Zoya, if Cenk Uygur were interviewing Putin, he tried to put back on the Ukraine? Well, sir, don't you know Ukraine is a sovereign democracy? Putin would eat this clown alive, and it's very adorable that Cenk Uygur think he could hang with Putin, or anyone of intellectual capacity, that is. But let's continue. Feel free to interrupt Zoya if you want to chime in, but let's continue.
and I'm perfectly happy to discuss them. In fact, we discussed them for 20 straight years here on TYT, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But sit next to a guy who's trying to be an imperial, recreate an imperial empire that has invaded several countries.
He literally said in the interview that is not his intention. They still, Cenk Uygur is one of the deeply unserious people who's pushing this lie that if Ukraine doesn't defeat Russia, he's gonna expand return the Soviet Union, return the Russian Empire. That's what he's hinting at, Zoya. That's what he's hinting at, friends and family. The most deeply unserious people in politics. So do you listen to the interview? Or are you purposely lying? Go ahead, Zoya.
Can you believe we're doing the Red Scare in 2024?
Unbelievable.
The Cold War was supposed to end. I mean, Putin, was saying to Tucker, "We're bourgeoisie now. We turned capitalist. Like, what else do you want?" Where they're trying to establish normal economic relations while America's still fear-mongering because they need to scare you. They need to make you believe that these countries are enemies, including China, so that you don't ever ask why we're spending so much money on the military that we can always find and always print, but yet you don't have health care and you don't have basic benefits that these countries do.
Wasn't Iraq a sovereign country when we invaded it? Absolutely. The United States does not have the moral high ground to play policeman. Great comment by our friend Dana Fairbanks. Also, Cenk Uygur supported United States intervention into Syria because he lied about the gas attacks, because he also has Assad derangement syndrome, by the way, as well. He has Putin derangement syndrome. I don't know his position on China, to be honest. I don't follow him that much, but I can only assume he probably got Xi Jinping derangement syndrome. I bet you he does. I'm not going to say for sure because I haven't looked into it. But that was one of the things when I was navigating the independent media sphere as my time as a worker who listened to a lot of independent media at the time. I was like, yeah. Soon as I saw him push like the Syria gas attack thing, and him and Jimmy Dore, that would lead to the split because Jimmy Dore and Cenk used to have like screaming like arguments about Syria, and Cenk was repeating CIA propaganda that Assad, who was winning his war with gases on people. Aaron Mate utterly destroyed him to the point where he got multiple awards in journalism because he dismantled the lie about the Syrian gas attacks. Cenk Uygur, to this day, will never admit that he was wrong about Syria. So Cenk Uygur, the hypocrite, he criticized Putin for quote-unquote invading a sovereign country, but you was okay with U.S. intervention into Syria, sir. Do you guys see how unserious the NATO left is? But let's continue. We only have a few more minutes because I rage quit around like 4 minutes. That's why I rage quit when I was scouting this video out. So we about a minute before I quit. So let's see how long we can make it. I'm gonna cover the Biden press conference as well. Let's see what's else in my notes. You got Hillary Clinton that was interrupted. So I got 2 more segments after this. So we're not gonna spend too much time on this, but I'm gonna get you guys to the point where I at least rage quit. I think I rage quit like 4:15. It was around the time. All right, done. Can't do it no more. But let's continue.
He's next to him and has started this disastrous war, trying to make him out to be like the peacemaker. Wouldn't you love to align with America? Well, don't you want a one world together? It's Biden that's stopping you right now. If we had a different president, maybe named Donald Trump, then we could have world peace, couldn't we? This seems like such a great.
Why do you gotta do a bit about what he said instead of playing what he said? And you know what we're doing right now? I'm not straw manning TYT right now. I am playing what they're saying, and we are laughing at them as a family. I see the comments. We are laughing at these buffoons, but you guys see how he has to straw man him. Where did Tucker bring up Trump? In the clip that I seen about this question, like. He has to create this completely false narrative about what was talked about. In the interview, Tucker was trying to convince Putin that China was bad. So what are you talking about? This is a straight up lying to your audience. You're misrepresenting the interview. And once again, if you guys feel a little bit better about this, his audience knows. And they get destroyed in the comments, my friends. Because even TYT viewers are not fooled by this, because the reason why I say this interview is so giant, because even the people who had misconceptions about Putin, the average person see Putin speaking and like, man, he is not the maniac that Cenk Uygur told me he was. Imagine you subscribe to TYT for 7, 8, 9 years, whatever. This motherfucker been paying Putin as the biggest devil in the world, as he support people who fund and enable genocide. I cut my rant short. Let's continue the video.
Piece of journalism. Come on, this is a joke.
Now,
Total
obviously,
joke.
just based on what we saw in that first clip, Tucker Carlson is trying to make a point about Donald Trump versus.
You guys know that first clip they cut off before Putin starts speaking? I don't know if you guys remember, but that's what they did. Is that an accident? I don't think it is. Let's continue with the Karen here. I'm sorry to interrupt you so fast. I'll let it continue.
Obviously, just based on what we saw in that first clip, Tucker Carlson is trying to make a point about Donald Trump versus Joe Biden and other American, political leadership that's been less friendly, at least rhetorically, toward Vladimir Putin. So let's continue on with that portion of their interview, that portion of their conversation. So let's watch more of it.
It is not about the leader. It is not about the personality of a particular person. I had a very good relationship with, say, Bush. I know that in the United States, he was portrayed as some kind of a country boy who does not understand much. I assure you that this is not the case. I had such personal relationship with Trump as well. It is not about the personality of the leader. It is about the elite's mindset. If the idea of domination at any cost, based also on forceful actions, dominates the American society, nothing will change.
Can we really trust a man who talks of the intellectual sophistication of George W. Bush? I don't know.
Do you guys see the childlike view of politics that they have? Why should we and Americans, why should the question be about us trusting Putin? We don't have to trust Putin. We should have the will to cooperate with Putin. Why should we be escalating war with Putin? Why are we demonizing Putin? You guys see the childlike way they view politics? Your opinion about whether you trust Putin or not is irrelevant. You want to know why? Because you don't pay fucking taxes in Russia. That's not your goddamn country. You want to know who you should be holding accountable? Jim Crow Joe, Genocide Joe. The question you guys should be asking is, why do you trust Biden? Why do you trust the United States? Cenk Uygur. Why do you trust the intelligence that told you about the Syrian gas attacks? You guys see how they want people to be distrustful and hateful of other countries? Meanwhile, they don't question their own government with this kind of disdain. To me, there's nothing more cowardly. The height of cowardice is people who spend all their time demonizing other countries, but they're too cowardly to hold their country accountable because they know it comes with social pressure. The people who do that are the biggest cowards. You guys notice I hold my government accountable. I hold the United States accountable. I hold the people who have civil asset forfeiture accountable. I hold the country accountable that killed 2.5 million people in Iraq, that destabilized the Middle East, that destroyed Vietnam, killed millions of people in Korea, that bombed Cambodia to the Stone Age. This is the government that we hold accountable. The biggest cowards are the bourgeoisie capitalists like TYT that want you to hate the other. Zoya, I know you want to chime in. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're on fire. She's also creating a false correlation between competence and intentions. Putin never spoke about Bush's record or agreed with all of his actions, and quite the opposite is true. But she's trying to say because he simply indicated that a leader was competent in his job, that it implies something else when it doesn't. All these people can do is try to manufacture a narrative out of thin air.
Yeah, we play one more clip and we get the super chats we do and we get to the next segment. Because this is the point where I quit. You guys know how. I think it was just I said 4:15. You guys know this. That what triggered my rant. I think this point where I was like, oh fuck this month. I'm tired of this shit. So I want to do one more clip because I think we get into the point where I haven't seen yet. So we get into uncharted territories. I think I was
Nothing will change.
Can we really trust a man who talks of the intellectual sophistication of George W. Bush? I don't know. I mean, that's, I guess, for you to decide.
Yeah, so I remember when Republicans in America used to be furious with actual journalists like Barbara Walters when they interviewed people who were not friendly to America. So she interviewed Fidel Castro, and they're like, "How dare you? We should never even hear from them." In fact, we found out recently from an interview at the Guardian that CNN says you should not even interview members of Hamas. So for fear that propaganda is going to leak out, etc. So now, what should be the real standard? The real standard is, of course, you interview foreign leaders, whether we like them or don't like them. But as you do that, you're supposed to challenge them with
He did.
questions, not arguments, not debates, but hey, how about this? How about the fact that Ukraine appeared to be a sovereign nation before you invaded it, right? Things along those lines.
Hold up. He really did that. Remember the bit I did earlier? So wait, hold up. So Cenk Uygur, his criticism, that's a great way to end it. His criticism of Tucker Carlson didn't bring up the fact that Ukraine was a sovereign nation. Do you guys understand how easily Putin would slap that question down, fam? Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, Jesus Christ. I want to see Cenk Uygur interview Putin. I want to see it happen. Because Cenk Uygur he's going to go into that interview being hostile and he's going to ask Putin, why you invade Ukraine? Putin's going to explain history. And he'll be like, well, isn't Ukraine a sovereign country? And Putin's going to be like, do you guys understand how easily that Putin's going to slap that down? Oh my God, that interview will go way worse than I thought it would.
The audacity of Cenk to say this while US forces are involved in at least 23 proxy wars across the world. Can we trust Putin? Can Putin trust NATO, who said they're not going to expand an inch eastward? They're just reversing everything to try to vilify someone who brought the facts to the table, facts that can be verified by Western sources. All Americans have to do after watching the interview is look things up for themselves.
When you have Victoria Nuland, I think this is it, picking the leader of Ukraine, how can you call them a sovereign country? I think this is it. Ukraine crisis. Transcript of leaked Nuland Pyatt call. You know, it's a date here. This is back when they was allowed to report on this, Zoya. They forgot to delete this from the archive. I've been waiting how long it'd take for them to go back and scrub some of these articles. February 2014. This was a big political scandal, completely erased from mainstream history. Victoria Nuland selecting the leader of Ukraine, but they think Ukraine is a sovereign country. They think Ukraine is a sovereign country when a democratically elected leader was overthrown in an illegal coup, which led to Eastern Ukraine and area in the Donbass wanting to leave and have their own independence because they wanted to reject the anti-democracy fascist Ukraine government. That was made up of people who overthrew a democratically elected government. And this is where the rise of violence in Ukraine started in 2014, where not only do you have the bandwagon that shelled and bombed people in Eastern Ukraine, but what a lot of people don't talk about is the political intimidation. Like whenever people was questioning the fascist Ukrainian regime, whenever people spoke out against the NATO expansion agenda, they were met with political violence because they're Nazis. That is what Nazis do. So how can you say this country is sovereign? Only if you're deeply unserious. Well, let's get to some super chats, and we can do the Biden story next because that's funny. I want to at least make sure I get into that one. So let's read. Let me take this out. We have a few here, so it shouldn't take too long. Thank you for the $5. Otto Carnage, FYI, Robert Kraft, the Patriot owner, is paying $7 million for pro-Israel ad during the Super Bowl. People have no idea how much our society has been infiltrated by Zionism. Why America as a whole are cucks to allow Israel to do what they have done. The mainstream story now see like what's his name? God Saad. He came out and said, "Yeah, I'm a Mossad agent." you know the influencer that a lot of the right wing has been listening to for a very long time. He just openly came out and said, "Yeah, I'm a Mossad agent." We have Mossad agents all over our government, all over Hollywood. They're doing propaganda. They're the capitalist class. The capitalist class that took over democracy and robbing you guys of your free speech. The national security threat. That is Zionism that infiltrated our government. The right wing has pretended that purple-haired, misguided college children was the biggest threat to free speech. You have Zionists that are running a campaign where they're trying to get everyone they can fired for their jobs because they're speaking out against the Gaza campaign, the genocide in Gaza. I know multiple people who lost their jobs. I can't say it. I'll respect. I can't say the name on stream. I know someone who, I know people in the professional managerial class that are getting canceled left and right. Meanwhile, white America is 100% okay with this fucking takeover of our government. Y'all think I'm gonna hold my tongue and see it with what's going on here? People are losing their jobs. Thank God I'm a citizen journalist. Thank God I work for myself. You guys know how long ago I would have been fired if I sold cars? They'd be like, hey, Toyota, hey, Hyundai, hey, look at it. Look at this shit Nick said about Gaza. Nick is speaking out against a genocide. I would have been fired 3 years ago. I'm unemployable. And if I can't do this shit, I'm fucked. I have been unemployable for a long time because our system has been hijacked by Zionists. But white America, 100% okay with it. Nigga, we need more money to the border. Let's talk about social justice issues. Let's talk about culture wars. Oh my God, the immigrants are they invading our country. They talking about immigrants invading our country as Zionists are taking over. Zionists completely hijacked this motherfucking shit. They talking about other nonsense. What's his name? Gassad? This is going viral, by the way. Gassad admits to being a Mossad agent. You guys see this 10 minutes. I'm not going to show you this. Actually, fuck it. Could they get right? I'm going to show you guys like 30 seconds.
So I kind of couldn't believe it in the book. You let the cat out of the bag. You're actually a Mossad agent.
Oh, you are the first person on my media tour to actually either have read that far into the book or to mention it. I thought it would be the top story in every show.
Zoya, they just talking about it out in the open. Yeah, I'm a Mossad agent. Very influential social media influencer in the West.
Stuff, and most people...
This is a Mossad agent just casually doing Mossad shit. And he's known as being this very Islamophobic person who extremely pro-Israel. I remember he had all these unhinged tweets on October 7th where he's like, man, I thought all these people I thought was friends, they're now showing us how they're anti-Semitic. Oh my God, there's a rise of anti-Semitism in this country and in the West. This is the same guy, because once again, I know who this guy is. He's been on a campaign against quote unquote social justice warriors for years now. That's what he's known for. He's the intellectual who's speaking out against how the left has gone too far. Which once again, Sonny's criticism I agree with sometimes, but his criticism is there's too much focus on racism. You guys keep talking about racism and social justice issues. You guys know it's those same right-wingers who made their career off of that criticism is now using identity politics for Zionism. The same people that say, oh, how dare you point out the fact that racism is this? They say, oh my God, there's a rise of anti-Semitism. How are people not connecting these dots? And how these people are just blatant hypocrites? Anyway, let me move on. I didn't want to do a segment on this. I just want to make my point on that super chat.
And I can tie it right back into the Putin interview because Putin kept skillfully pointing out who's really in charge. Because anybody that's trusting their eyes and ears can see that Biden can't be in charge of his own breakfast, let alone running a country. So who is actually pulling the levers? And Putin was warning gently about all of these agencies that work in the background. And Mossad is a perfect example of one of them, who are pulling the strings on all of these geopolitical crimes.
And if you point this out back in the day, the fact that Zionism has infiltrated our society, they'd be like, oh, that's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Are you saying that Jews control the world? Like, we're saying Zionists have infiltrated the West, which is undisputably true. And now I came to the realization that the people who were saying that's where that conspiracy came from. Because I remember hearing that growing up because they're like, white supremacists say that Jews taking over the world. That's Mossad bullshit. And we showed you guys the Mossad agent that said they created the anti-Semitism psyop. Now in hindsight, I'm like, man, that was the argument. The argument that is Mossad infiltrated our government, they infiltrated the United States, and look at everyone in the Senate that straight up has dual Israeli citizenship. Look at Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Senate. He has more loyalty to Israel than us. Nancy Pelosi says if anything gonna burn, if any domestic policy agenda gonna fail, if Congress was up in flames, they'll still make sure they take care of Israel. And they say this out in the open. The idea that if you point this out that you're anti-Semitic, that was one of the most successful and, to be quite frank, successful and intelligent psyops that they pulled off. It was very successful. I'm just glad that the mask is off. You guys think that these genocidal maniacs calling me anti-Semitic, a black man in America, you guys think that fucking fazed me at all? If you're not being called anti-Semitic by these Zionist Mossad scum, you're doing something wrong.
And let's also remember that there's plenty of Zionists that aren't even Jewish. The evangelicals who want to see the end times go down, who could care less about Jews, and actually in their plan, all the Jews are supposed to die. They're huge supporters and funders of Israel. Zionism and Judaism is not the same thing. Being anti-Zionist does not make you anti-Semitic, and there's no larger threat to Jewish safety than Zionism.